When an elderly black man is wrongfully arrested, his one phone call reveals he's not just another victim of the system. He's the father of a Supreme Court justice, and today's injustice is about to become tomorrow's reckoning. EXT. Maple Street. Afternoon. Henry Washington, 72, distinguished with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, walks carefully with his grocery bags toward his parked sit-in. He moves with the measured pace of someone who has seen much of America's history unfold over decades. Two police cruisers suddenly pull up alongside him, lights flashing. Officer Reynolds, 34, and Officer Barnes, 28, exit their vehicles quickly and approach Henry with hands near their holsters. Officer Reynolds, "Sir, stop right there. Put those bags down now." Henry looks confused, but slowly sets his groceries on the sidewalk. His hands tremble slightly as he straightens up. "Henry, is there a problem, officers?" "Officer Barnes, we received a call about a suspicious person matching your description. Need to see some ID." "Henry, suspicious. I'm just getting groceries. I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. Officer Reynolds, ID. Now." Henry reaches slowly for his wallet. Officer Reynolds tenses, hand moving to his holster. Henry freezes, recognizing the dangerous moment. "Henry, I'm just getting my wallet, officer." Moving slowly, Henry carefully retrieves his wallet and hands over his identification. Officer Reynolds studies it with obvious skepticism. "Officer Reynolds, this address is 3 blocks from here. What are you doing in this part of the neighborhood?" "Henry, this is where Simmons Market is. Been shopping here since 1983. Officer Barnes, speaking into radio. Running a check on Henry Washington, DOB 6/14/53. Several neighbors begin gathering across the street, watching. Some take out phones to record. Henry notices them and feels a mixture of embarrassment and relief at the witnesses. Officer Reynolds circles Henry's car, peering inside windows. He stops at the trunk. "Officer Reynolds, pop the trunk." "Henry, may I ask why?" "I haven't done anything wrong." Officer Reynolds, voice hardening. "Sir, we've had reports of break-ins in this area. Your behavior is suspicious, and you're being uncooperative. Last time, open the trunk." "Henry, I understand you're doing your job, but I know my rights. You need probable cause for a search." Officer Barnes returns from the cruiser, expression darkening. "Officer Barnes, system shows an outstanding warrant from Monroe County." "Henry, that's impossible. I've never had any trouble with the law." Officer Reynolds, turn around. Hands behind your back. "Henry, this is a mistake. Please, let me explain." Without further warning, Officer Reynolds grabs Henry's arm and spins him around. Henry winces in pain as handcuffs click around his wrists. His groceries remain scattered on the sidewalk. "Henry, please be careful. I had shoulder surgery last year." Officer Reynolds, ignoring him, "You have the right to remain silent." As the officer continues the Miranda warning, several more neighbors gather. A woman across the street clearly films the encounter. Henry sees Ms. Peterson, 68, his longtime neighbor, watching in horror. "Henry, Mrs. Peterson, please call my daughter Sarah. Tell her what's happening." Officer Barnes escorts Henry to the cruiser while Officer Reynolds begins searching through Henry's grocery bags. "Mrs. Peterson," calling out. "Henry, don't worry. I'll call Sarah right away." A&T. Police Station, Buking area. 2 hours later, Henry sits on a bench, still handcuffed, while officers process paperwork. His normally dignified posture has given way to exhaustion, but his eyes remain alert and observant. Sergeant Wilson, 50s, approaches with a clipboard. Sergeant Wilson. Mr. Washington, the officers say you were uncooperative during a routine stop. Henry. With all due respect, Sergeant, there was nothing routine about it. I was targeted while simply walking to my car with groceries. The officers didn't explain why I was being stopped until after they demanded ID. Sergeant Wilson. They were responding to a call about a suspicious person. Henry. And what made me suspicious? My age. Or my race. The sergeant shifts uncomfortably. Henry. I'd like to make my phone call now. Sergeant Wilson. That'll be arranged shortly. First, we need to process you for the outstanding warrant. Henry. That warrant is a mistake. I've never had legal troubles in Monroe County. I've never even been there. Sergeant Wilson. System says otherwise. Henry. The system is wrong. And I have one phone call to prove it. INT. Police station. Phone area. Later. Henry stands at a wall-mounted phone, finally free of handcuffs, but under the watchful eye of Officer Barnes. He dials carefully and waits. Henry. Into phone. Justice Washington, please. Tell her it's her father, Henry. Yes, it's an emergency. Henry waits. Then his expression changes to one of relief. Henry. Sarah. Thank God. I've been arrested. No. I'm not hurt. They claim there's a warrant, but it's clearly a mistake. Yes, they stopped me at Simmons Market. Henry listens, nodding. Henry. I understand. I'll tell them. Henry turns to Officer Barnes. Henry. My daughter would like to speak with the officer in charge. She's Justice Sarah Washington of the Supreme Court of the United States. Officer Barnes's eyes widen in shock. Officer Barnes. The Supreme Court? Wait here. He hurries away, returning moments later with Sergeant Wilson, who takes the phone cautiously. Sergeant Wilson. This is Sergeant Wilson. Yes, Mom. I understand. Yes, Justice Washington. The sergeant's face grows increasingly pale as he listens. He glances at Henry with new eyes. Sergeant Wilson. Of course, ma'am. We'll straighten this out immediately. I personally guarantee your father's comfort and safety until you arrive. The chief's office stands in stark contrast to the harsh fluorescent lighting and institutional sterility of the booking area where Henry Washington had spent the previous hours. Here, warm wood paneling covers the walls, adorned with framed commendations, certificates, and photographs of Police Chief Elena Martinez shaking hands with various dignitaries and community leaders. A large window overlooks the parking lot, where the late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the asphalt. Chief Martinez, 58, a woman with sharp eyes and silver streaks through her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, sits rigidly behind her imposing oak desk. Her uniform is immaculate, each brass button polished to a high shine, her posture military straight. Yet despite her composed exterior, there's a telltale tightness around her mouth, a subtle sign of the stress this situation has suddenly thrust upon her shoulders. She's built a 27-year career on competence and control. Today, that control is slipping. Across from her sits Henry Washington, now ensconced in a leather visitor's chair that seems designed more for intimidation than comfort. The handcuffs are gone, and someone has provided him with a ceramic mug of coffee that steams gently between his weathered hands. His cardigan is slightly rumpled now, his dignity somewhat restored, but the humiliation of the day etched in the tightness around his eyes. Mr. Washington, Chief Martinez begins, her voice maintaining professional composure despite the circumstances. I want to personally apologize for this unfortunate incident. The warrant was for a Henry Washington with a different middle name and birth year. Our system should have caught that discrepancy immediately. She slides a printout across the desk toward him. It shows two records side by side, one for Henry Thomas Washington, born June 14, 1953, Henry himself, with a clean record, the other for Henry James Washington, born August 23, 1958, with an outstanding warrant for unpaid traffic violations in Monroe County. Henry glances at the paper without touching it. He takes a deliberate sip of his coffee before responding, using these moments to gather his thoughts. The coffee is surprisingly good, not the bitter, hours-old brew he would have expected. Someone made a fresh pot after the phone call. The issue isn't just the warrant, Chief Martinez, Henry says finally, his voice carrying the measured cadence of a man who spent decades in courtrooms. It's why I was stopped in the first place. Chief Martinez leans forward slightly, her hands clasped on the desk. The officers were responding to a call about a suspicious person. From whom? Henry asks, the question hanging in the air between them. From one of my neighbors of 40 years, or someone who saw an elderly black man in a cardigan and decided he didn't belong. The chief has no immediate response. The wall clock ticks loudly in the silence. A framed photograph on her desk shows a younger Martinez receiving an award for community policing initiatives. The irony isn't lost on either of them. Chief Martinez, Henry continues, setting down his coffee mug. I taught constitutional law for 32 years at Howard University. I've written 3 textbooks on civil rights jurisprudence. I know the difference between reasonable suspicion and racial profiling. He gestures toward the window, where the evening shadows grow longer. Do your officers regularly stop elderly white men carrying grocery bags in that neighborhood? Martinez shifts in her chair. She's not accustomed to being on the defensive in her own office. Our department has strict policies against racial profiling, Mr. Washington. Policies are words on paper, Henry replies, not unkindly but firmly. Actions are what matter. When Officer Reynolds approached me, his hand was already on his weapon. Before I'd said a word, before I'd made any movement, what exactly about a 72-year-old man with arthritis carrying organic produce suggested I was dangerous? Chief Martinez removes her glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose briefly before replacing them. The call mentioned someone looking through windows of houses. The responding officers were told the individual was an older black male wearing a brown sweater. I was walking on the public sidewalk, carrying groceries toward my legally parked car, Henry says. He reaches into his pocket and withdraws a receipt. I have the time-stamped receipt from Simmons Market showing I was inside shopping when this call was allegedly made. The chief studies the receipt without touching it, her brow furrowing slightly. Henry can see her mind working, calculating timelines, reassessing the sequence of events. She's beginning to understand the full dimensions of the problem facing her department. This isn't about me being the Supreme Court Justice's father, Henry continues, his voice softening but losing none of its intensity. This is about human dignity. How many others without my connections face this treatment with no recourse? How many other Henry Washingtons are sitting in holding cells right now because of mistaken identity or because someone decided they looked suspicious? Chief Martinez's gaze shifts to a framed photograph on her wall. Herself as a rookie officer 30 years ago, the only woman and only Latina in her graduating class. I understand discrimination, Mr. Washington. I've faced it myself. Then you understand why this matters so much, Henry replies. The badge gives power, tremendous power, and with it comes responsibility that transcends whatever policies you have in your manual. Martinez nods slowly, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal genuine concern. What happened today was unacceptable, Mr. Washington. I won't pretend otherwise. And yet it happened, Henry observes. Under your command, in your jurisdiction. The chief's computer chimes softly with an incoming message. She glances at the screen, and something in her expression changes. A subtle tightening around the eyes, a straightening of her already rigid posture. The mayor is on his way, she says quietly. And the county commissioner. Henry nods, unsurprised. My daughter tends to be thorough. Is she? Chief Martinez begins, then hesitates, searching for the right words. Planning to make an example of your department. Henry completes her thought. Sarah believes in systemic change, not public shaming, but she also believes in accountability. A gentle knock interrupts them. The door opens slightly, and Officer Garcia, the chief's aide, a young officer with a careful manner, leans in. "Chief, the mayor's car just pulled in, and there are news vans setting up in the parking lot." "News vans? Already?" Chief Martinez's composure wavers momentarily. Henry sighs. "That would be my former student, Elaine Cooper. She runs the civil rights beat at the Tribune. Someone must have recognized me at the scene." The chief absorbs this new complication with a slight nod. "Thank you, Garcia. Keep me updated." As the door closes, Chief Martinez turns back to Henry. "Mr. Washington, I want you to know that the officers involved will face appropriate disciplinary action. We'll conduct a full review of the incident." "That's a start," Henry acknowledges. "But disciplining individual officers doesn't address the underlying issues. You have a culture problem, Chief Martinez, not just a personnel problem." The chief looks at him with sudden intensity. "You've been on both sides, academia and practical application. What would you suggest?" Before Henry can answer, another knock comes at the door, more insistent this time. Officer Garcia reappears, his expression tense. "Chief, Justice Washington has arrived, with Congresswoman Lee and Attorney General Rollins." The chief's composure falters visibly now. The Supreme Court Justice, a Congresswoman, and the Attorney General. This has escalated far beyond a local police matter in the span of a few hours. "They're asking to see Mr. Washington immediately," Garcia adds. Henry raises a hand gently. "Tell my daughter I'm fine, and I'll be out shortly. The chief and I are having an important conversation." Garcia looks uncertain, glancing between Henry and his superior. "It's all right," Chief Martinez confirms. "Please inform Justice Washington that her father will join her momentarily." As Garcia withdraws again, Henry turns back to the chief. "You asked what I would suggest. First, recognize that what happened today wasn't an aberration. It was the system functioning as designed. Second, understand that true change requires more than diversity training videos and updated manuals." Henry leans forward, his voice growing more passionate. "Your officers need to live in the communities they police. They need to know the elderly man walking with groceries is Professor Washington, not a suspicious character. They need cultural competence that comes from relationship, not just regulation." The chief listens intently, no longer the defensive administrator, but a professional genuinely engaging with criticism. "Third," Henry continues, "you need civilian oversight with actual teeth, not a review board that can only make recommendations, but one with the power to implement change. And finally, you need to address the fact that suspicious person calls are often proxies for racial bias. When these calls come in, your dispatch needs better protocols for determining what constitutes actual suspicious behavior versus what's just discomfort with difference." Chief Martinez nods slowly, thoughtfully. "Those are substantial changes. Substantial problems require substantial solutions," Henry replies simply. The chief stands and moves to the window, looking out at the growing media presence in the parking lot. "This will be a difficult story for the department." "It doesn't have to be," Henry says. "This could be the beginning of something important, not just damage control. Real change often begins with uncomfortable moments like this one." Martinez turns back to face him. "Would you be willing to help us implement these changes, not as a PR move, but as a genuine advisor to the department?" Henry considers this thoughtfully, studying the chief's face for signs of insincerity. Finding none, he nods slowly. "As one of my heroes once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I'd be honored to help bend it a little further." A final knock at the door signals that their time alone is ending. The outside world, with all its complications of media, politics, and public opinion, awaits. But in this moment, something important has been acknowledged between them. The recognition that behind policies and procedures, behind badges and bench appointments, are human beings capable of both error and growth. "Shall we?" Chief Martinez gestures toward the door. Henry rises slowly, the day's stress evident in his movements. "My daughter can be quite formidable, Chief Martinez. I've argued before the Supreme Court twice," the chief replies with the ghost of a smile. "I'm familiar with Justice Washington's thoroughness." "That was in her professional capacity," Henry says, returning the slight smile. "This is her father. You may find it's an entirely different experience." Together they move toward the door, two professionals with decades of experience, about to step into a situation that will test everything they believe about justice, accountability, and the possibility of meaningful change in an imperfect system. The setting sun bathes the facade of the municipal building in amber light, casting long shadows across the steps where a small crowd has gathered. News vans line the curb, their satellite dishes extending skyward like mechanical flowers, seeking the last rays of daylight. Reporters clutch microphones and huddle in anticipation, their camera operators jockeying for the best position. The evening air carries the electric tension of imminent revelation, the collective breath-holding of a community about to witness something significant unfold on the very steps, where countless mundane press conferences have dissolved into the forgettable background noise of local news. The glass doors of the station swing open, and Henry Washington emerges with measured steps. The cameras immediately swivel toward him, flashes popping like summer lightning. Henry pauses momentarily, blinking against the sudden assault of light and attention. His cardigan, rumpled from the day's ordeal, and his wire-rimmed glasses reflect the dying sunlight, giving him an almost luminous appearance. The dignity that officers Reynolds and Barnes had so casually dismissed hours earlier is now unmistakable to all who watch. This is not merely an elderly man. This is someone whose very bearing speaks of wisdom, earned through decades of both struggle and accomplishment. Following close behind him comes Justice Sarah Washington, 45, her presence commanding immediate attention. Unlike her father's casual attire, she wears a tailored charcoal suit that speaks of authority without ostentation. Her natural hair is pulled back in a neat bun, and her expression carries the careful neutrality that Supreme Court justices cultivate over years on the bench, revealing intelligence and attentiveness while concealing immediate judgment. Yet those who know her well would recognize the subtle tightness around her mouth, the barely contained indignation simmering beneath her professional composure. Today, she is not just a justice. She is a daughter whose father has been mistreated. Behind them emerge Congresswoman Evie Lee, 52, representing the district that includes this very police station, and ATTORNEY General Michael Rollins, 61, whose presence transforms what might have been dismissed as a local incident into a matter of national significance. Both carry leather briefcases and wear expressions of grave seriousness. Their presence sends an unmistakable message. What happened today will not be brushed aside. Explanations will be demanded, and accountability is non-negotiable. Chief Martinez emerges last, her uniform still impeccable, but her typically confident stride now measured and cautious. She positions herself slightly apart from the Washington party, but not in opposition to them, a subtle but important distinction that the more astute reporters immediately notice. The chief's expression conveys professional concern rather than defensive posturing, suggesting that the conversations inside may have yielded more understanding than confrontation. The assembled press corps surges forward, a cacophony of shouted questions drowning each other out. Justice Washington raises a hand, and the noise subsides with surprising quickness. Her voice, when she speaks, carries the same measured clarity that has defined her opinions from the bench, thoughtful, precise, and imbued with moral authority that transcends her official position. "Thank you all for coming. I'll make a brief statement, and then Chief Martinez will address you as well," she begins, her gaze sweeping across the assembled journalists. "Today, my father experienced what too many Americans face daily, the presumption of guilt based on appearance. The warrant mix-up was merely a compounding factor in what began as a clear case of racial profiling." She pauses, allowing the weight of her words to settle. The evening breeze stirs her father's silver hair as he stands beside her, his expression reflective rather than triumphant. This is not a victory lap for him, but a necessary moment of truth-telling. My father has spent his life teaching constitutional law and advocating for civil rights. Justice Washington continues. The irony that he would be subjected to this treatment is not lost on any of us. But more importantly, we recognize that for every person with connections to power, like my father, there are thousands of others who face these indignities without recourse, without cameras, without justice. Congresswoman Lee steps forward, her presence adding legislative weight to the judicial authority already established. What happened today is precisely why we introduced the Community Policing and Accountability Act in Congress. This isn't about vilifying police officers. It's about creating systems that ensure equitable treatment for all Americans, regardless of race, age, or appearance. Attorney General Rollins nods in agreement but remains silent, his presence alone communicating the federal interest in what might otherwise be dismissed as a local matter. His watchful gaze sweeps over the assembled officers standing at the periphery of the scene, noting their reactions, assessing the department's culture through these unguarded moments. Chief Martinez steps forward now, the cameras swiveling to capture her response. The gathered officers straighten almost imperceptibly, watching their leader navigate this delicate moment. Martinez clears her throat, her voice steady despite the pressure of the moment. In light of today's events, I'm announcing an immediate review of our department's protocols and training. What happened to Mr. Washington was unacceptable. We will do better, she states firmly, looking directly into the cameras. Starting tomorrow, we will implement new guidelines for responding to suspicious person calls, requiring officers to articulate specific behaviors rather than relying on vague descriptions or assumptions. A murmur runs through the crowd at this unexpectedly concrete commitment. Reporters scribble notes furiously. Chief Martinez continues, her voice gaining strength as she speaks. Additionally, I've invited Professor Washington to serve as special advisor to our department's new Community Relations Initiative. His expertise in constitutional law and civil rights will be invaluable as we work to rebuild trust with all segments of our community. This announcement draws surprised looks from some of the officers present. Clearly, this decision was made very recently, but Henry's slight nod confirms the arrangement. Justice Washington's expression remains measured, but those who know her well might detect a flicker of approval at this unexpected development. Questions erupt from the press court, but Justice Washington raises her hand again. We'll take questions another time. Today has been difficult for my father, and we're taking him home now. We ask that you respect his privacy. With that, the official portion of the press conference concludes. The Washington party begins to move toward a waiting black SUV with federal government plates. As they walk, members of the community who have gathered approach Henry, offering handshakes, words of support, and in some cases, their own stories of similar encounters. Each person receives Henry's full attention, a moment of genuine connection amid the chaos of cameras and commotion. EXT. Police Station. Parking lot. Moments later, away from the main crowd, in a quieter corner of the parking lot, Henry finds himself face to face with Chief Martinez again. The cameras are distant now, unable to capture this more intimate exchange. Justice Washington stands a few paces away, giving them space while remaining protectively close to her father. Professor Washington, Chief Martinez begins, her formal tone giving way to something more personal. I want to thank you for agreeing to work with our department. I know it's asking a lot after what happened today. Henry studies her face for a moment, seeing beyond the uniform to the person beneath, someone wrestling with institutional failures that preceded her leadership but now fall under her responsibility. I spent 40 years as a civil rights attorney before I retired, Henry replies, his voice carrying the weight of decades of both progress and disappointment. I've seen this country change in ways my parents could never have imagined. I've seen doors open that were firmly closed when I was a young man. But days like today remind me how far we still have to go. A patrol car pulls into the lot, and both Henry and the chief watch as a young officer exits the vehicle, casting curious glances at the media circus before entering the station. The future of policing, embodied in a single reluctant figure. "What would you suggest we start with, sir?" Chief Martinez asks, her question genuine rather than perfunctory. Henry considers thoughtfully before answering. "Start by hiring officers from the communities they police. People who recognize Mrs. Peterson as a retired school teacher rather than seeing her only as an elderly black woman. Create civilian oversight with real teeth, not just advisory capacity." He gestures toward the gathered community members still lingering near the steps. "And remember that behind every suspicious person called is a human being deserving of dignity until proven otherwise." Chief Martinez absorbs his words, nodding slowly. "Those are substantial changes. They won't happen overnight." "Justice rarely does," Henry acknowledges with a small smile. "But it matters that we start." The chief extends her hand, and Henry takes it. A simple gesture transformed by context into something profoundly symbolic. Not forgiveness exactly, but a mutual commitment to moving forward with purpose rather than recrimination. "Would you be available to meet with my command staff next week?" Martinez asks, to begin outlining what this community initiative might look like. Henry glances at his daughter, who gives an almost imperceptible nod of approval. "As one of my heroes once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I'd be honored to help bend it a little further." Justice Washington approaches now, placing a protective hand on her father's shoulder. "We should get you home, Dad. It's been a long day." Henry nods, the fatigue of the day's events finally showing in the slight slump of his shoulders. "Yes, I think I've had enough excitement for one afternoon." As they turn to leave, Chief Martinez calls after them. "Professor Washington, your groceries. We had an officer bring them from where they were left. They're in your car, which has been brought here." This small gesture of consideration, remembering the mundane beginnings of this extraordinary day, seems to touch Henry more deeply than the formal apologies. He acknowledges it with a nod before allowing his daughter to guide him toward their waiting vehicle. As they walk away, Justice Washington leans close to her father. "Are you sure about this, Dad? Working with them after what they did?" Henry watches the last rays of sunlight fade behind the police station, casting long shadows across the parking lot. "Change doesn't happen from the outside looking in, Sarah. You know that better than most." He pats her hand where it rests on his arm. "Besides, I've been teaching constitutional law to reluctant students for 4 decades. A few police officers shouldn't be too much trouble." His daughter's laughter, warm and genuine, offers the first moment of lightness in this heavy day. As they reach the car, Henry turns for one last look at the station, not in anger or resentment, but with the measured assessment of someone who has seen enough of American history to know that progress comes neither easily nor inevitably, but through the persistent efforts of those willing to do the difficult work of reconciliation. A&T Community Center, 3 months later. Henry stands before a mixed group of police officers and community members, facilitating a dialogue session. Officer Reynolds sits in the front row, looking uncomfortable but present. "Henry." And that's why these conversations matter. Change doesn't happen in courtrooms alone. It happens when we see each other's humanity. After the session, Officer Reynolds approaches Henry hesitantly. "Officer Reynolds, Mr. Washington, I wanted to say, I'm sorry about what happened. I've been thinking a lot about it." "Henry, and what have those thoughts taught you?" Officer Reynolds, "That I had assumptions I didn't even realize I was making. That I need to do better." Henry, "That's a good start." Officer Reynolds, "That's where justice begins." Outside the center, the setting sun casts long shadows across the community garden, where Justice Washington waits for her father, watching with quiet pride as he continues his lifelong work, teaching America to be better than its worst instincts, one conversation at a time.